Hello and welcome to Forever Box. And an interesting story on a Monday, the Rassie Erasmus teasing a new concept of refereeing on Friday in his second part of the interview with Stephen Kutzer, which actually got me thinking about the future of refereeing really and how much this could impact a team like the Box, where, for example, the emphasis on this is the scrum. And when you've got a team who are so scrum dominant, this is kind of an interesting concept in terms of, the evolution of refereeing. And it's amazing how Rassie Erasmus has come from, the whole refereeing debacle and stuff like that, and come full circle in terms of trying to work out how do we support the referee and how do they can get things right with the referee to try and make their lives a bit simpler and to try and make sure that the decisions and what's kind of going on is far more accurate whilst giving them the sort of the tools to be able to do it itself. And I thought it was an interesting one to look at. And I think that it is something that they need to start considering, because I do think we do not use technology enough when it comes to refereeing and officiating in general. I do think that there's a large scope for more cameras getting involved, maybe TMO getting involved and stuff like that on certain issues to try and streamline and facilitate a better officiating process. So we're going to go into that and kind of look at potentially how it might work. Before we do that, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. So on his fourth episode of the podcast, which is actually a part 2 of Stephen Kitsoff, Rassie Erasmus has suggested a new concept for refereeing, and basically says that he would like to see a dedicated referee for scrums. Do you have a scrum referee? So basically, this is what he had to say. He said, we made a massive mind shift on respecting the referee and understanding they can't always 100% understand a maul or a scrum, because the referees may have been a backline player, and sometimes I'm not sure what's happening in the scrum as the head coach, talking about how complicated scrums and mauls and the likes that are. He says, what do you think about a scrum referee? If there's a scrum, it's an ex-prop who just runs on he referees that scrum, and the moment the ball's out, he runs off again. So he says, so it's a specialized scrum referee, and people might laugh at this, but I think that's where they get most guessing if there's not pure dominance. It's always the guy folded in or whatever. But what do you think of a prop referee and he's just off the field again, and the game goes on, or don't you think that could work? Now, it's an interesting concept. Obviously, in that sense and in that kind of iteration, it's not going to work. You can't have a referee suddenly sort of running on basically every single time there's a scrum, and then basically running off immediately, because first of all, the chance of getting him in the way is pretty high, and the practicality of that is not great. And Stephen Kitsoff joked about it, saying, you're probably going to have to need two referees in terms of being able to sort of cover the 80 meters. But he did say, I think it's great. It's a great idea as a spectator watching a URC game. A scrum happens, there's a penalty being blown, and sometimes I'm thinking, what's this ref actually seeing that I'm not seeing, or vice versa? He says sometimes you just need a guy that's actually very zoned in with certain movements in a scrum, and he's scrummed there before. I think there's definitely scope for it in rugby. I think that what they're talking about in terms of a dedicated referee is not going to happen. We're not going to be able to have, run on a darn human, for a scrum and be able to officiate it. But what I do think is scope is to add more assistance to the referee when it comes to scrums. And I mean, at the moment, if we look at it, for example, this is kind of what a referee's view is when you look at a scrum. So they're looking at very side on, and obviously they can kind of see a bit sort of aerial, for example, but you're not going to be able to see it entirely. For me, we've got technology. We've got spider cams. This, for me, especially when it comes to sort of international and tournaments, the likes of that, I think this can become a really, really useful tool for a refereeing point of view, because what you see above is a completely different picture to what you see from the side. And I think that there should be a collaboration process, really, where when it comes to a scrum, the referee is watching the side and watching players potentially slip. But on the inverse, you've got the TMO looking at the top picture, for example, and you've got the other, obviously, touch judge kind of looking at the other side of the scrum. Because in theory, between the two of them, or the three of them, you should be able to get a decision right. And if you can see someone's clearly scrumming in or hinging, or for example, the likes of that, then it becomes far easier to check from above. And you just relay it. You say, right, scrum blue, hinging in 1, for example. It can be really, really simple, or but just be able to relay a decision with regards to what's happening there, because it is such an important part of the game. And although at the moment a lot of people are sort of feeling that it's being depowered a little bit, and whether it will be around in the next 10, 15 years, we'll have to wait and see, especially because of the way that they've changed things. But also, I think we're looking at far fitter, bigger, looser players, and World Rugby is so intent on the idea of ball and play and speeding up the game and the likes of that, and people talking about the fact that props might not be around for much longer. But I do think that there's lots of scope to try and improve the refereeing of the scrums. And this is a huge thing that the Springboks will obviously like to push because it is their biggest weapon. You know, they won a World Cup, and a major part of that was Oxenchair, for example, in the second half, just winning scrum penalty on scrum penalty. And I think that the biggest frustration comes when you've got clear scrum dominance, but the referee's not seen that picture, and you're being pinged or wrongly not awarded for this kind of situation. So I do think that one of my biggest frustrations is that, we talk about the technology, and I'm not saying that we want to have more TMO involvement, because I do think at the moment we are seeing an issue with almost too much TMO involvement, but it's the way they're involved. What decisions are they taking? What decisions can they take? And I do think there's a lot of scope for spider cams and aerial angles when it comes to scrums, the likes of that. I think the TMO should be looking at a lot more sort of live stuff than just reviewing stuff and going and slowing down footage for the last 4 or 5 minutes and trying to find something that's gone wrong. I think, you can pick up off the ball tackles, for example, and then you can look at pick up off the ball incidents that you then go and watch. So similarly, for example, you could actually have a situation where the scrum goes down, the referee says play on, and then, 2 or 3 seconds later, they can actually call a penalty because the TMO has managed to have a look at it and said, no, it's clearly a penalty, and you kind of go back. Whether people actually want that in terms of kind of stoppage to the player, I don't know. Obviously, from a scrum perspective, it means in theory the scrums will be refed better, and I think will be more consistent with regards to sort of the decisions being made. It might slow down the game, so that's probably why, World Rugby won't even consider this kind of directive. But I think the main thing is to try and innovate, and how do we help out the referees to paint a clearer picture when it comes to the scrums so that they can get these sort of things right. What do you think? What would you change? How do we get this to accurate? As I said, Rassie Erasmus' suggestion is not particularly practical, but it is the way you can kind of take the concept and maybe make it actually work within the game. Let me know your suggestions down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.